The Honourable Nick Goiran.
President, I rise as we consider the Abortion Legislation Reform Bill of 2023 and whether it should be third read or not. The bill that's presently before us now is a 59-clause bill and it covers some 54 pages. However, there is one clause in this bill, President, clause number 8, that is 20 pages alone, and it required substantial scrutiny by the Committee of the Whole House over the course of the last 2 parliamentary sitting days and, in fact, all of the 3 parliamentary sitting days last week. One might ask, President, what was achieved by the Legislative Council, the House of Review, in spending that period of time considering the 59 clauses of the bill and in particular clause 8, which covers, as I say, some 20 pages. In my view, President, as we now consider the third reading, there were 3 things that were achieved. It clarified matters, it corrected misinformation, and legislative enhancements were considered. The first of those 3 things, President, is the clarification of matters. Helpfully, the Committee of the Whole House, having done its work and now reported this bill to the House, has addressed clarification of matters particularly regarding mandatory counselling. There is a special statutory definition of informed consent under the current law of Western Australia, President, and that will continue to apply for what we understand will be the next 6 months until such time as the bill before us becomes law. It will be replaced but with the common law definition of informed consent. This was an important clarification by the Committee of the Whole House because there has been a misunderstanding in the community that there is this form of forced counselling that goes on in Western Australia. No one has been forced to have counselling, and everyone moving forward will still need to be informed of the risks of having an abortion. It was very worthwhile, President, in the Committee of the Whole House that the government tabled a document which helpfully sets out those risks with regard to mortality, morbidity, hemorrhage, infection. What is referred to in this document that was tabled by the Department of Health as retained products of conception, failure of abortion, bleeding and cramping, uterine perforation, cervical trauma, increased risk of subsequent preterm birth and psychological well-being, which will require time to improve. All of these risks will need to be informed and provided and communicated moving forward, and there has been no such thing as forced counselling up until this time. It was also useful, President, that the Committee of the Whole House was able to correct misinformation. The Committee of the Whole House was able to deal with whether the bill is actually fully decriminalising abortion. The Health Minister has wrongly said that Western Australia is fully decriminalising abortion, but the Committee of the Whole House, when it considered clause 4 of the bill, proved that that is untrue. The Health Minister has also wrongly said that there's no such thing as a failed abortion, yet in the committee stage, President, a document was tabled by the government which confirms that, in fact, failure of abortion is one of the risks that health practitioners in Western Australia are expected to communicate to a person who is considering an abortion. That particular document, entitled Abortion Care Information and Legal Obligations for Medical Practitioners, at page 20, reads as follows. Both medical and surgical abortion carry a small risk of failure to end the pregnancy, 1 or 2 in 100, resulting in a further procedure. The risk of failure is higher in very early pregnancy. For terminations performed by suction curettage, there is a 3-fold higher failure rate for those performed before 7 weeks gestation compared with those performed at 7 to 12 weeks gestation. There is some research to suggest that failure of medical abortion increased with the woman's age and gestation. This, President, was a tabled document during the Committee of the Whole House phase, and I thank the government for providing it to correct the misinformation. President, the Health Minister has also wrongly said that there's no such thing as babies born alive after an abortion, yet the committee was told by the Leader of the House that there have been 28 cases and that they are presently with the coroner. The Committee of the Whole House also heard that the Honourable Roger Cook gave evidence to a parliamentary inquiry that 8 late-term cases occurred between 2013 and 2017 alone. And indeed, in that evidence, that babies without a severe abnormality were born alive at 23 to 25 weeks. President, I turn to the third of the perceived benefits of the Committee of the Whole House stage as it has now presented the bill to the House for its third reading, and that is the legislative enhancements that were considered. A number of enhancements were considered, President, including an amendment by the Honourable Ben Dawkins to retain 20 weeks instead of 23 weeks as the late-term threshold. This particular amendment was lost. Sadly, in my view, President, complex cases at 20, 21 and 22 weeks will no longer now involve 2 doctors. And sadly, viable cases at 22 weeks will no longer involve 2 doctors. There was an amendment that I had moved, President, an enhancement that would require that one of the 2 doctors be an obstetrician and gynaecologist for any late-term abortion. And this was recommended by the Australian Medical Association. Regrettably, that enhancement was lost. The Committee of the Whole House, President, also considered an amendment moved by the Honourable Kate Doust, an amendment to insert mandatory considerations before a doctor performs a late-term abortion, consistent with the South Australian legislation, consistent with the petition that the Honourable Member tabled on the 29th of August with some 5,394 signatures. Regrettably, that amendment was lost. President, there was also an enhancement considered to require that both doctors be involved in a late-term abortion be from Western Australia, as recommended by the Australian Medical Association, an amendment which I moved. Regrettably, that amendment was lost. President, there was also an enhancement considered with regard to a prohibition of abortions for Down syndrome. This was moved by me in accordance with a petition that I had the honour of tabling on the 8th of August this year, and as requested by some 3,023 petitioners. Regrettably, that amendment was lost. President, there was also an amendment moved by the Honourable Kate Doust, consistent with the South Australian legislation, to amend the bill to prohibit abortions for sex selection. Regrettably, that enhancement was lost. President, there was also a further amendment moved by the Honourable Member, this one mandating that doctors must offer information about counselling, consistent with the South Australian legislation. Regrettably, that one was lost. President, the Honourable Kate Doust also moved an amendment affirming the duty to provide medical care and treatment to a baby born alive after an abortion, consistent with the South Australian legislation. And I indicate, President, reporting back to you after the Committee of the Whole House process, that regrettably that matter was lost, one that troubles me particularly so, having pursued this matter since 2011 when the Honourable Ed Dermer first uncovered this problem. President, I moved an amendment during the Committee of the Whole House phase to delete the bill's new ban on the Chief Health Officer continuing to collect data on the reasons for abortions, as is the case under current WA law. Regrettably, that enhancement was lost. And President, the last one that I draw to your attention was an amendment that I also moved to require that the Chief Health Officer publish an annual report with de-identified information on abortions, as per the practice in South Australia. Regrettably, that enhancement was lost. And so I turn, President, in particular, and draw to members' attention and to your attention, President, the consideration by the whole House of Clause 20. This is, in my view, the most repugnant clause in the bill. People inside and outside Parliament have strong views on whether abortions should occur and in what circumstances. And in my view, it's difficult to see that ever changing. That's not what this clause is about. People inside and outside Parliament have strong views on whether abortions should occur because of a diagnosis of Down syndrome. That's not what this clause is about. People inside and outside of Parliament have strong views on whether abortions should occur because of sex selection. That's not what this clause is about. People inside and outside Parliament have strong views on whether it is necessary to insert a statutory provision confirming the existing duty to provide medical care and treatment to a baby born alive after an abortion. That's not what this clause is about. President, This clause, clause 20, says that the death of a child born alive after an abortion, being a reportable death currently pursuant to Section 3 of the Coroners Act, a Western Australian death of a child is to no longer be a reportable death. My translation of that, President, is that the WA coroner is no longer to be notified about these cases. In an extraordinary admission during the Committee of the Whole House stage, President, we were told by the government that this is not the case in any other Australian jurisdiction. We will be the only ones that prevent these reports from going to the WA coroner about the death of a Western Australian child. This surely must be, President, the most darkest provision on our statute books. I've raised the plight of Western Australian babies born alive after an abortion in no less than 18 parliamentary speeches since 2011. This bill doesn't change the legal duty to provide the necessaries of life to these youngest Western Australians. President, this bill and no bill can ever change the ethical duty to care for these babies who are objectively the most vulnerable Western Australians by far. President, this bill attempts to make sure that the WA coroner never investigates these cases. Unlike in New South Wales, unlike in the Northern Territory, and unlike in every other jurisdiction, this is darkness clothing itself in darkness. That's why, President, I'll never stop speaking up for our most vulnerable Western Australians. And President, that's why I'll be opposing the bill.